Okay, Rob, are you ready?
Ready to go, David. It's all you.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank SAME National Headquarters, Mr. Rob Biederman, who is actually facilitating this session today, and all the support they give to the Facility Asset Management Community of Interest, as well as the Geospatial Working Group. And thanks to all of you for taking the time for joining us today. My name is David Foster. I am the chair of the SAME's Geospatial Working Group and today's moderator. One of the things that we're going to do is have Andres, our speaker, after he's done, he'll take some questions. Please use the chat to enter in your questions, and then we will go from there at the end of his discussion. Today's webinar adds to an immeasurable century-long list of events fulfilling the Society of American Military Engineers mission to build leaders and lead collaboration among government and industry to develop multidisciplinary solutions to national security infrastructure challenges. We could not be more pleased as this event also concurrently supports fulfilling the Geospatial Working Group's mission to provide a forum for geospatial engineering, cross-functional support of DoD missions. Our members are passionate about location. We believe location data has been crucial to the development and advancement of civilization since the beginning of time. It enables the integration of disparate data, knowing what capabilities are available, who the experts are, and how to employ them makes all engineers stronger. Use and value of location information are universal. It is invaluable to those competing in the digital age as it provides the foundation for common understanding of diverse operating environments. Location intelligence capabilities build upon this foundation, fueling effective decisions. For those here today and engineers around the globe, think how we could plan, respond, and recover from natural disasters, execute humanitarian response operations, coordinate and conduct kinetic warfighting operations, build, sustain, and protect DoD infrastructure, or compete globally against peers without capabilities like global positioning systems, building information models, computer-aided drafting and design, construction and geodetic survey data, geographic information systems, maps, remotely sensed data, or user-defined dashboards making the invisible visible. Simply stated, location matters. The sentiment is shared by today's presenter, Mr. Andres Abeyta. Andres is the Executive Director of Bootcamp GIS. He is an ed tech industry thought leader who has delivered innovative online and in-person geospatial education to every branch within the Department of Defense and many other federal agencies. He has a master's degree in geography from San Diego State University and a master's in education from the University of Mexico. Andres, thank you for joining us. We're excited about all you will share with us today. And as I look at the people that are online, we literally have people from around the world joining us today from all the branches of service. So I'm going to hand it over to you at this point.
Thanks, David. That was a kind introduction. This is awesome, really, to get together with people from different places, because the effort to get to each of your installations, as I've been to many of them, is immense, as you know. So a real neat forum to be able to do this presentation. So as David mentioned, I've been really a thinker in the education space and technical, especially GIS, and I'm really glad to tell you some trends and some ideas and perspectives that we have, and really hopefully anticipate some discussion and some ideas that you'll throw back at us. So I believe that this presentation, as I give it around to school groups, recent college graduates that are in an organization, or individuals trying to better themselves, this is going to have something for a lot of different types of people, whether you're a student trying to further education or in charge of a training plan, or maybe you're a pretty sophisticated user and might be one of our peer-to-peer instructors that can educate others in stuff that you know. So I'll move on forward, and we'll start with this. Here's the big slide that I think is an attention getter, because nowadays the idea of getting some education, and whether it's a certificate or a degree or a graduate degree, it's not good enough in the tech sector to just rely on whatever you learned in that, span of space. We are coaching students to start to really develop a plan for themselves to be ongoing learning all the time. We all have this device that gives us real-time access to the world of information. And if you haven't really thought about proactively thinking about how to feed yourself with technical content to stay current and relevant, then you probably should. All of us are a new type of consumer, student consumer that's out there. When we think about consuming anything, we're all using these real-time apps. I need a certain type of a room or a certain type of food or a ride. We want these things to happen in real time with low friction that come to us. So my question that I put to really the education sector is, why aren't we doing this for students in the education world and providing them curriculum that can be fed to them very quickly? That's the push that I've been on, and really asking that question and trying to break down some walls and some old paradigms to make that difference. And it's happening. Ed tech is a thing. The educational technology sector is something that's growing, and it's a $1 trillion business that's about to be projected, especially due to COVID. I want to say a little bit about the two backgrounds and perspectives that I come from. One of them is being an educator in the geospatial world for actually about 25 years now. And our team has been developing custom curriculums, not just to show you the software, but to show you how to do your job with geospatial tools. And that's what we've done for all of these organizations. So it's been great to travel to a lot of these federal organizations. But one of the things that I found is that the speed of developing education and getting it conveyed out to students is very slow when you're dealing with a large organization. And so that's what made me start to think differently about how we create content and provide it to students. And in doing so, I started to step out of the geospatial only sector and spend a lot more time in the ed tech sector. And I found that it was really energizing to rub shoulders and be side by side with the other people that were really changing the face of content delivery, like the Coursera's, the Udemy's, the Chegg's, Duolingo. These people were the nucleus of what was going on in ed tech, and I got accepted into accelerators and forums and conferences to be a speaker on behalf of like GIS industry. It was really awesome, and I really didn't find anybody else really thinking about geospatial delivery in all of these meetings that I've been doing for about 5 years now. So with these two backgrounds, that really informs me to the ideas that we have here in this presentation. So one of the things is, I think that even though I got my master's degree in GIS and education, the idea of getting a graduate degree in something technical, I don't think is a really good return on investment anymore. And the reason is you can find cheaper, faster, and better ways to learn the same content. If you think about the higher education system, it's geared for tenured professors to be able to do research, teach a few classes, and they'll put the same classes on a catalog that really can exist for a long time. At my alma mater at San Diego State, I look at their course catalog and they have 80 to 85% the same classes I took 25 years ago. That's not really good for students if you're taking the exact same class and tech has really evolved. So for those of you that may be getting out of the military and think, where should I go to get some more education? I would think twice about getting a master's degree from that type of source, because I wouldn't advise my own kids who are in college to go get a graduate degree, and some of them are pursuing tech and coding. So there are other sources to be found. And here's an indicator why what I'm saying is already true. These companies that you know really well, they no longer require an undergraduate degree to get hired in their technical divisions. That's because they can find people with aptitude through an internship, a micro credential, not a full-blown degree, or a boot camp. And if they have aptitude and you can tell people, this is what I can do with the tech, then that's far better than you telling me you've got a 3.8 grade point average from UC, whatever. Because that's proves that you could get a degree, but I really want to know how close are you to doing the tasks that we have in our job. And in our job that we're offering is all about geospatial workflows and applications and managing data. That's the skill set that we would hope that you would really hone in on if you're going to further yourself in the geospatial world. So you have this opportunity. You know, geospatial is a really awesome and meaningful, it makes you feel good to be part of that because you're helping manage decisions that make a difference on the face of this earth with cities, people, habitats, animals, disasters, lots of good stuff to be contributing to. And so geospatial is healthy. It's growing to be this almost $18 billion industry here in a couple more years. But the area that it's growing in, the top part of that graph there, is not what I learned in school. And I learned in school, I would take intro to remote sensing, intro to cartography, and then we would print out a map and put it up on the wall. Nowadays, that growth in the top part of that bar really is who can go and create the workflow, the dashboard, manage the data and put it up into the cloud and application. It's not as much about who can create the map, but it's who can create the map system. If you have those skills, you are extremely marketable. At the same time this is happening, we're in this perfect storm where e-learning, digital learning, is growing to be $1 trillion industry, as I just mentioned. So both of those things put together create this overlap of, if you're paying attention to a big 7 high-tech growth industry like GIS and how to learn and keep current with that, that's digital learning of the right types of workflows in GIS that will really help move you ahead. So there's this thing that higher education really doesn't mention too much to students, and it's called a skills gap. And it's everybody that is in industry that really understands that, because when you try to hire somebody, you realize there's this gap between what college students know and what you want them to do in your job. So I've looked at 100 different GIS certificate programs around the United States, and almost all of them have this list on the left that they're offering. Those are the classes they can put on the books that really don't change in their course catalog for decades. But if you look at the most recent job announcements, which I've looked at 300 of the latest ones on Indeed and GIS Jobs Clearinghouse, they're asking you to be able to have the skills on the right. So that's the problem. We need to solve the skills gap and get more people learning how is it that we apply geospatial skills out in the real world. And there's a lot of content developers that are taking advantage of this in the commercial sector and saying we got to address this skills gap. And now they're building boot camps in a lot of different tech areas. We are doing that and really focusing on that list on the right. So there's different trends in the industry of learning. I'm sure all of you have heard of a coding boot camp, but about 5 or 6 years ago, they didn't exist. And now there's actually over 100 of them. And you can go and take these coding boot camps either right now or even in elementary schools. I'm in California, I live in San Diego. I know that there's little coding programs they're offering to, 1st through 5th graders. They're really pushing down this tech education to the younger audience. And the cool thing about it is they make it fun. And then for other coding boot camps, they make it relevant because they're taught by practitioner educators. Who do you want to learn coding from? 65-year-old Professor X that's tenured, that hasn't coded for a living ever maybe, and maybe did it in their dissertation 30 years ago? Or do you want to learn from the person that codes for a living at Yelp or LinkedIn or Google? The latter is the one that's going to show you how to do work in industry. The second trend is when I give this presentation to new college students or existing people who are trying to transition their careers, I say there's 3 ways to learn something technical in the world of GIS. You can go and take this class called Geography 865 in a graduate program at a famous university like Penn State or even San Diego State. And it's called Cloud Server and GIS, but it's not taught by anybody that does cloud serving for a living. And therefore, it's got this skills gap. They really can't tell you how to do that cloud project. Or you can go to Esri and you can learn their software user interface really well. And that works as you go through the demos, but as soon as you get it out of the box, then you're missing user requirements, stakeholder needs, financial models, some sort of agile execution. It's really how to do a project that's missing. Or you can choose choice C. And choice C is let's take an industry expert and what they do for a living with geospatial. Let's create a short course out of that. And if they show you their project using geospatial, how good would that be for you to go from end to end, the entire workflow? That right there is just like, you know, looking over the shoulder of an internship of somebody who's going to show you exactly how to do the entire workflow. And isn't that what we do often already? The new audience, when I ask them which of these do you choose, they always choose choice C because they say we go to YouTube all day long and I don't need a semester-long class in car mechanics. I just want the 10-minute video that says, how do I disassemble my entire plastic front grille just to change the dead headlight in my my Hyundai. That's meaningful education. That's the new student consumer, what they want. And there needs to be more of this type of education and to serve students like all of you on this call. The last trend I'll show you is that COVID has really put pressure and even fractured the education paradigm in America, maybe the world. Students have their eyes wide open. With COVID having to stay at home and all the schools shut down, they still had to learn and get help and get support, continuing their degrees, but they couldn't do it by sitting in classrooms anymore. So they started to look around and find other sources of education and help. And so now that COVID will eventually, you know, be controlled, students have this ability to serve themselves with their educational needs. So schools are going to have to react to that and make their degrees and certificates more valuable. Their product of education has to be proven with a better return on investment. And one of the ways they can do that is by teaming with the commercial sector and showing that we have industry expertise that can be coupled with a degree, or maybe it's in continuing education as just some added on education that people might need later in life. And that's what we're doing. We're teaming with several universities who do not have any GIS expertise, or some of them that do, but they know that ours is better, so that they couple our certificate programs with their content. And right down there at the bottom, we have a partnership with Esri, and that was really neat because they recognized that they teach their software really well, lots of education on that, but they don't teach how to become a geospatial professional very well. And by that, I mean all the other stuff that's outside of their software, like I mentioned before, figuring out how to run a project and execute, cost it, and even manage it. On the business side, we have business classes on GIS, and Esri Academy does not. So what's happening in the whole industry of education is this paradigm shift. If you think about it, the paradigm of how education is delivered really hasn't changed in hundreds of years. There's some intelligent person and people walk into a classroom, they listen to him, and they go away and they do some homework. That's the one-to-many, where you have a few faculty that only know what they know, and they convey that same stuff out to many people. But the new model for lots of e-commerce, selling lots of products and services, and education now included, is the many-to-many model. We often call that peer-to-peer. So we get peers to teach other peers. And when I go to YouTube, I don't care about the qualifications, 3-letter acronyms or whatever behind the car mechanic. I can just tell pretty quickly, does he know what he's talking about? Does he clearly get to the point of showing me how to change a part out of my car? And if I feel successful with that, even though I'm not a car mechanic, then I'm going to go and find the next video and allow me to progress and fix the next problem that I have in my automobile. So many to many is the new platform paradigm, and you see lots of organizations doing that, like Udemy and LinkedIn Learning and Coursera, and we fall into that same area. You should be looking for the platforms like this because there are many out there in different tech sectors: data science, coding, cloud architecture, GIS. These are great places to learn, because tech changes so fast that the person that you really want to be talking to and learning from is the one that struggled with this problem just ahead of you, and it may be just a few months, and they figured it out, recorded it, and now are sharing it with you. That's how it has to happen in tech, and not the old paradigm. So I've really looked at the tech industries as a whole, how they're growing, what skills we need in geospatial, and the overlap that GIS has on all these other IT sectors. And so when I advise my college-age son or any student that comes to us, I say you should really be paying attention to these overlaps of where GIS touches these other areas, because you could develop a whole career on these. These are the career relevant things that are exploding right now, that if you just find a focus in on how you process data off of UAVs or set up map applications in the cloud, that's a very doable and learnable skill set that you could spend a couple of months learning, and then people need that around the world. So look at all of these. You'll see that there's courseware and ways to learn Python and data science, machine learning. All of these are growing very quickly, and geospatial is attached to that. I think our content that we have on our platform, all of them are applied classes, and we try to find ways to marry or dovetail into each of these, so that we are really not just isolating GIS as a piece of software, but how it is working in a system integration or data integration way with various industries. So from a training plan perspective, you may be a manager, or you may be just saying, how do I learn for myself? This comes to the topic of this talk, a Spotified training plan. All of us use Spotify, I think, to stream music to us. So that idea makes sense to us. I don't want to have to be going and putting on a record and choosing my music. This app should be able to do this for me. So it does do that for me, and the stuff that I like. It's not an app yet, but I think somebody's going to build an app like this. I've even talked to one of the EdTech innovators at one accelerator who was telling me, yeah, he's going to start to build something like that. But in the meantime, here are the sources that probably you're already using in a way, like being part of a LinkedIn group, or this association right here, SAME. There's other associations like MAPS and Construction Managers of Association of America and URISA. Those are all good places to be connected to and getting a learning opportunity like this. TEDx, I think, is awesome, because you can just sit there and watch a podcast or video and get inspired by people who are really thinking forward, and can help you get a little bit of vision for maybe not only yourself, or like me, I've got college-age children who are thinking about how they're going to make their own careers. And then get into these platforms where you're sharing content, ideas, support, and help, like GitHub for sharing data and applications, Stack Exchange and Stack Overflow. If you're in the coding world and want to get help support quickly, those are really good things that can complement like Esri's knowledge base and support when they may not be able to help you, outside of Esri software. And then the ideas are one thing, and going and seeing a presentation like this, there's only so much that I can inform you with an idea, but then the actual execution and how to do something, you really need to go and find ways that you can watch those YouTube-like videos And you can do that with the various boot camps that are out there. BGIS is Bootcamp GIS. AWS, you can learn cloud certifications. LinkedIn has various micro-credentials in different technical topics. And they're very cheap and quick. And higher education is not cheap and quick. So when you start to compare those two, you're going to see a very different return on investment. So the thing that might be interesting for some people in this audience, if you're an accomplished GIS user or know of one, we search out people like that. If you got some talent and you figured out a workflow, chances are somebody else needs to know that same workflow. So we try to find people that have some practitioner experience that we can then record into a short course and share with everybody else. That's the magic of YouTube and why it's so popular, is that quick recording and then let the world see that. We're doing the same thing in Geospatial. And when we do that, that allows us to bring together the best thought leaders who figured out really important workflows and applications with Geospatial, and really focus in on various vertical industries like military applications, engineering applications. And I'd love to talk to you because you could be a great instructor candidate for us to serve the rest of this audience. So our platform is now a team member of SAME, and maybe David can talk about that a little bit more at the end, but it's yours. You can come in and figure out a piece of content to teach, and the students will be able to start to see many of the latest applications and a lot of the areas I spoke to before as great places to, or great applied areas to add to your portfolio. So my last slide is, how do you stay tech relevant? And it really is something that you have to Spotify. You have to, in the tech world, stay up to date by developing some sort of ongoing learning strategy, have your network of thought leaders that you can rely on. So as you go and you interact with instructors on our platform, they're all in industry and very helpful in trying to encourage you to come in and follow in their footsteps and contribute, because honestly, the industry itself is suffering from a lack of human resource capital. We need more people that can become the GIS solutions engineers, GIS architects, GIS admins. There's not enough of them. And when I talk to somebody at an organization that happens to have that title, that person is extremely overwhelmed, and that organization is extremely scared if they were to lose that person because there's not enough of them. So it's a great career move to kind of follow in that place, and then learn from these people that are your peers, and that's one of the best places to learn. So if you do want to access our platform, then bootcampgis.com is the place, and you can come in and take a single class or get a full certificate, 6 courses. We help you with career preparation in 6 different ways, and you can accomplish this in 6 months. Some of you may be thinking, what will I do after life of being in the military? Use your GIS skills, get a certificate, a body of knowledge, stay relevant with all the ideas I just gave you, and there's really a great future for you. And so here's some educational resources for you. I'm going to actually put in the chat these same things, so you don't have to write it. You can copy and paste it. There's some information about the GIS certificate with the SAME page, and you can come in and talk to me, and we give individual personalized advisory session on what background you have with GIS, as little or as much as it may be, and then where we could help you with that. And we'll set up a plan. It's called a certificate planner for you if you'd like, and show you what could advance your career. So you just book a calendar session on that advisory link that I just put in the page there. And this is what it looks like if you go to the page for SAME. Is this landing page just shows you about the certificate program. So you'll see announcements on new courses, new instructors that come out of this audience that can be on our platform and help you develop a personalized learning path going forward. So I would like to turn it back to David as the moderator for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Andres. And so a little bit more on the partnership. This partnership is brand new between the Society of American Military Engineers and Bootcamp GIS. It's a part of SAMI's strategic pursuits for credentialing, enhancing industry, government engagements, and strategic partnerships. So this is a great new partnership for those in the Society of American Military Engineers to take advantage of. For all of those that may be attending that aren't a part of SAMI, please consider learning more about our organization and what it does for the Department of Defense around the world, as well as the Geospatial Working Group. If you are a member, join us. Just go to your user profile, click the little box next to Geospatial Working Group, and then you can join us and get communications based on topics that are relevant to this community. So let me see. If anybody has any questions, please do add them into the chat. I don't see any at the moment, but if you've got questions for Andres and on anything related to this, please feel free to enter those in. In the meantime, Andres, are there courses that you're offering or that you offer applicable to a person new to GIS? And when I say new to GIS, it could be a leader trying to understand what this thing is, GIS, and learn how to spell it, or it could be also, you know, the actual technician.
That's a great question. We get all types that come and set up this advisory session with me. You can fill that out on our contact form when you come into our page. And the cool thing about GIS is it's a very eclectic audience, and people stumble upon it and find it in, you know, mid-college, after they graduate. And just last week, I had somebody with a history degree say, I can't get a job, and I took this one professor who told me I should take a look at the GIS and geography, and I like maps, you know, but I don't know anything about it. I said, all right, some of my best colleagues who run development projects also were in your situation that have an anthropology degree, an English degree, and they stumbled upon this and they just had the ambition to say, oh, I can learn this stuff by working on projects, taking online training. So the answer is yes, you can come in and learn any of our classes from the ground up. And I'm going to go back to that analogy I said. When I go in and I watch a video of some car mechanic doing something, I don't have a background in car mechanics, but I'm watching this video and then I'm trying to do the same thing they're doing with changing out, you know, some part in my car. It's hard to get lost with our exercises, and they are complex workflows, but we are showing you with a video exactly what you have to do with some piece of data or a script or an application. And so you just got to do that in your other monitor. And then you're going to come out in the end with an application or some workflow or piece of data, a model. That's exactly what we do in industry. So I think that's the beauty of the thing, is we can bring people along from intro to advanced pretty quickly. And the other thing is I have the goal of pushing down this tech education down into even to the high school audience, because it shouldn't be an accident that people walk into our industry later in life. We should be telling younger people, here's a meaningful, gainful employment type of career opportunity that you don't need to spend 6 or 8 years going to school for. So yes, anybody with an intro novice background can come in and take our classes.
All right, thank you for that. Let me see, Colonel Kevin Gallinghorse. Andres, thank you for your presentation today. Good to see you again after meeting you previously in my previous role at Fort Leonard Wood, now in a new role at St. Louis. So my question is, have you worked with any specific organizations within the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers yet?
Within U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, I have not. So that is partly a function of this platform is pretty new. And we're looking for partnerships with every level of government, many higher ed institutions who don't have a good GIS program. I want to use our content to help their audience learn GIS. And then some associations, the ones I think, have an audience that should be using geospatial tools a lot more efficiently. Yeah, with Army Corps, I've taught classes on site there before, and it certainly is one of the audiences that should be really rethinking the paradigm of how they are learning these tools and staying abreast of them. So if you'd like to have a conversation with me afterwards, my content or email was on the slide before. Hopefully you wrote it down, but I'll put it in the chat for everybody to ping me.
I got it. Thank you.
All right, we've got another question from, it's like another Army individual in Northern Virginia. Angel Martinez states, is focus on just Esri GIS tools, any open source like QGIS? So is this just an Esri focused thing, or do we have the ability for anything, not just QGIS, but this whole slew of softwares that are relevant to industry? But I will leave you with that question over.
Hey, Angel, that's a great question. I love it. Thank you for asking that. So when I first conceived of this platform, I know that Esri is the giant in the industry. You have to know those skills to be the most marketable. But many of the instructors that are on our platform, when they get Esri tools and data, then they usually have to do some sort of system integration to other things, for especially the larger the organization gets. And so when we started designing this, we said, we don't want to be just Esri focused. And we said, we're totally open to creating courses in some other open source tools like QGIS, having Python, that's open source as well. Third-party products like GeoCortex or Pix4D for processing data that comes off of drones. Doesn't have to be the Esri piece of software. So we're totally open in terms of finding somebody that's doing a geospatial integration as a instructor to say, what is that process? And it doesn't have to be. Realistically, it usually isn't just Esri software. So we have lots of multi vendor and software and technical pieces in a lot of our workflows as classes. And the other neat thing about this was when we partnered with Esri, I was a little bit concerned that, they wouldn't want to partner if we were teaching stuff outside of Esri's sales department. But they were really open, and that was a really good thing because they said, all right, we understand that our software integrates a lot of stuff, and that's your goal, is to help people learn that whole other piece that we're not good at teaching. So that partnership continued, and they paved the way to give us software for instructors and students. So we're really thankful for that.
Andres, to that point, actually, Jack Dangermond, the owner of Esri, I just saw him in a video. If you've never seen the Geospatial Revolution by Penn State University, they just published episode 5, I guess, recently, and it's all about the pandemic. And the one thing that he said was that this is cross-functional, and he was talking about things that his organization doesn't do specifically, but it's the cross-functional integration that actually makes geospatial or location data so invaluable to understanding our world. And so to your point there, it's not just about one product or another. It's Python, it's Qt Modeler, it's open GIS softwares around the world. It's data science on so many different levels and things that I don't even understand. Bringing that all together, integrating those disparate data into something that actually makes the invisible visible. So, and one last thing is just to reiterate, this is this capability is only as strong as the community, right? As strong as those people who step forward and become those educators of their peers, and realizing like, hey, I just fought through that battle. I know there's people behind me that are going to be fighting the same battle. Let's not make them have to relearn this the hard way. Let me step up and be one of those guys teaching those behind me. So,
Can I add on to that? So here's
absolutely.
my thought process when I think about new classes. It's not what's the next extension out of Esri. I think about problems in the world. Flooding with hurricane in the Gulf Coast. You know, how are they using GIS to quickly find places to put people and assets and, you know, help people? Whoever's doing that, I want to find that person and make a class out of that, because the rest of the world needs to know how to do that. Or when I just see a documentary on plastics in the ocean, who in the heck is mapping out, you know, where this plastic is, the flow of it, and the sources of it, these major rivers? I want to find that person, because if you can make classes on stuff that addresses these, you know, world problems, these human problems, that's compelling education for the rest of all of us in this audience that want to say, hey, I want to have a skill that helps the planet and uses a piece of technology that we know is very powerful. So I don't care about what software it is. I think about what part of geospatial tech solves that problem. And that's why many of you may have ideas on this call or know somebody. Come have them talk to me.
All right. So for those in the military, are the skills that they learn translatable to commercial industry?
I just gave a talk at another association organization called MAPS, Mapping Association for Photogrammetry Professionals. And in that's a conference that's mainly for the business leaders and CEOs of 100 of the most significant geospatial companies in the country. And when they were listening to my talk, I got lots of questions, and they were really tuned into this thing that I mentioned, the skills gap. Everybody loved that slide, and they said, you know what? I can't hire these college graduates. There's just such a huge skills gap. So think about that. If you're coming out of the military and wanting to enter into the commercial sector with some skills in GIS, if you've honed in on that career relevancy list, then, or taken some of our classes that really directly address that, then you're right there with hireable skills. You're so much closer to what the job task is versus, you know, the semester architecture of, you know, higher education. So coming out of military, if you get exposed to, you know, any piece of GIS and you're really thinking about the learning and you're given continuing education, I know support, keep learning, and you're not going to need a degree to jump into the tech sector. As I mentioned in one of the slides, you know, us in the tech sector, some of our first questions are, tell me about some projects you've done, and I want to hear you talk about that accurately and maturely. And that makes me feel comfortable that you could do our job. That's it, not the degree.
You know, I think, you know, one of our greatest assets are our young service members, whether they decide to make a career of it or whether they decide to get out and join industry. I know personally that they bring a ton of experience that's applicable, but what would make them even more stunning, if you will, are those additional things that just gets them, you know, experiences that they may not have experienced. They already are bringing a ton of experience. They're well educated, and then if they add an additional capability, they're unstoppable. I mean, hell, they're unstoppable now, but it just makes everyone better as they continue to work on their own professional development, both inside and outside of the military. Now I'll put a shout out to the young members group, or COI. If you know any young folks that are out there that are young professionals, the Society of American Military Engineers is focused on serving them and working on issues related to their focus and their careers. So again, I see senior leaders, a number of them here on the call, but bring the young folks. We need them because they are really the strength of engineers of tomorrow.
Yeah, and these younger people, or anyone that's looking at a few steps down the line of their career, right now, the structure is set up to allow a GI Bill to go off and get access to a university and maybe get a degree or an advanced degree. And that's what needs to be really shed a light on, and why I hope this association with SAME and Bootcamp GIS is a good thing, because you have to see some other alternatives. Most of those people aren't going to know a lot of the stuff that I'm telling you is the trends and the change in the education models that are going on out there. And if you invest 4 years to go get a degree and you find out, like many students that are coming to us right now, I got a degree, but I still am not technically marketable. So how can you help me? That has to change. And there needs to be this education process to make that happen. Because if you're paying attention to the ed tech world and the delivery paradigms like myself, you'll see stuff like, hey, Coursera is probably going to be exceeding the prestige of Harvard with a technical degree very, very soon. And why? Because industry says, I really am after the person with the Coursera skills, not a Harvard degree in being able to do something technical for my organization.
So Colonel Gollinghorse is actually chimed back in about emergency management and disaster response. Is offering to have discussions related to that, because there's a ton of lessons learned. I believe that probably the St. Louis district learned through, it looks like, Hurricanes Laura, Delta, and beyond. I tell you, having served with U.S. Army Northern Command, who is responsible for the Joint Forces Land Component, doing disaster response or Defense Force Civil Authorities, there is a ton of value when it comes to disasters response, or actually preparation, response, and recovery. So I would certainly be willing to join any conversation with anybody else that is interested with Colonel Gollinghorse, to see if we can continue to bring those ideas and try to build sustainable solutions. And that's, again, this goes back to none of these things are new. People have experienced a ton of these things in the past, but people move on. Young people move on, they get promoted, they PCS to different organizations, they get out of the military, and all those experiences, unfortunately, have to get relearned sometimes. But anyhow, so that was just a comment from him, and Andres, he put his email and his phone number down there for you. So when you're looking at this later, you can, or right now, go ahead and grab that.
I'll say one thing about that hopefully will inspire other people. So I'm glad to hear that comment from the Colonel, and I'll say the same thing that I said to David. Hey, when the beauty of our platform is that you have some ownership of it, meaning if you point to somebody, David or a Colonel, that you think is doing some really great work and has a project that you want the rest of Army Corps engineer or of your military installations to be employing, then we can create a course out of that. And the short course, what it is a set of 10 lessons that go through step 1 through 10 on how to complete a project. And as you can imagine, it's not all software based. There's like acquiring the data, fixing the data, figuring out who the stakeholders are that want certain decisions out of the data, up until we do the processing, and put it into some map, framework.
And I would say how to communicate these things with leaders.
Yeah.
And like I think you said, don't be too much of a scientist one time. And this community, it's they're data scientists, and so they're going to talk geeky. And commanders, it's hard for them to as they're making decisions to try to translate what's coming out of our mouths sometimes. So even that.
Yeah, that's right. So if you point me to somebody that's doing great geospatial work, our process is to create that 10-step video course in about 8 weeks. Think about that. That's agile learning, agile education production, because all of our competitors in the higher education sector, they tell me, these tenured professors, it takes us about 3 years to have a course on the books, advertise for students, and get students with their butts in the seats. 3 years in tech will never, ever compete with the commercial sector like the Coursera's and General Assemblies and Bootcamp GISs who are creating commercial content in the tech sector quickly. And that's what's needed for you, your audience. You have to have quick creation and consumption. Otherwise, you start to fall behind. And one of my taglines on one slide that I didn't show you is, whoever does education, tech education transfer the best, outcompetes the rest. And it is a competitive thing. Other countries, other organizations competing for funding. You have to be really good at this.
All right, Andres, we got other people with experience. Ronald Torgensen talking about experience with the same type of stuff back in with Esri. So he's actually, how do we get PDH certificates for this great presentation? Rob, if you can actually talk about the PDHs and how to obtain those.
Sure. Hey, thanks, Ron. Ron asked this question on an earlier webinar. We are just running behind. We will produce the PDH certificates and email them to you. But we're a little bit behind, so bear with us on that.
Okay, so that's for the credit, the 1 credit for attending, and then the presentation. As it looks like Angel was talking about PDFs. Will this presentation be available through SAMI's webpage? I know we videoed it and it's likely going to be posted, but would we also have the PDF available? So I guess Andres and Rob there.
If Andres sends it to me, I'll send it out to all the attendees.
Fantastic. Let me see. There seems to be no other questions coming in. We are 7 minutes before the hour. I would like to take this time again. Andres, thank you so much for your time. I'm stoked about this partnership and where it could go. I do know that it's dependent upon the community to make it really as powerful a thing as we believe it should and can be. And really looking forward to the next few years, seeing how this evolves with participation of folks that, you know, the leaders that are here today and those that they have that are behind them that are busy at work, making the defense of our nation stronger as we sit here and chat about educating ourselves. So with that, I want to do one last thing and hand it over to Rob for any comments from headquarters, and then I believe we'll give everybody back their time, a few minutes at least.
Great, thanks, David. First thing, we'd like to thank Andres for putting this on and for all the attendees for attending and your great questions. And David, thanks so much for your moderation of the session. So we are as well excited about this partnership with GIS Bootcamp, and we would encourage everybody to take a look at the landing page and see what you can find out for yourself on that. But we are very excited about that. Again, we will send out the PDH certificates. We are way behind on that, so I apologize for that, but you will get them. And when I get the presentation from Andres, I will send out the presentation to all the attendees. But again, thanks very much for Andres. These things don't happen if people like Andres don't volunteer to put these presentations on. You did a great job. And David, thanks so much for being a moderator. And thanks everybody for joining us today.
All right, that's Aeons. Have a great week.
Thanks, everyone.